Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good day to everyone. Welcome to our technology webinar series. This is edition number 4, brought to you by Singularity Aerotech Asia. This is the webinar where we discuss everything aerospace engineering and technology. My name is Afif bin Badul Hisham. I am the head of business development of Singularity Aerotech Asia, and I will be the moderator for today's event. And for today, we are collaborating with MATRADE from the Ministry of International Trade and Industry, as well as Strand Aerospace Malaysia, and we are going to talk about exporting aerospace engineering from Malaysia to the world. So when we talk about aerospace engineering, not many people in Malaysia actually realize that we actually do have that capabilities within the country. And to think that we actually export these capabilities to the world is also something that is quite unbelievable for a lot of us. So the intention of today's webinar is actually for us to give a little insight into the aerospace engineering services in Malaysia, as well as how these talents are developed and what kind of roles the government is playing in actually promoting engineering services as an export product of the country. And for today, again, as always, we are blessed with the attendance of three distinguished speakers that will actually help get us all the experience and insight into what we are going to discuss today. And without further ado, I would like to introduce our lineup for today. So the first speaker for today is Mr. Azman Mat Yusof. He is the Senior Manager of Transport and Logistics Division, and he is in charge of the Aerospace and Defense Unit. And Mr. Azman has been a long-time collaborator of Strand Aerospace Malaysia when it comes to selling Strand's aerospace engineering services capability to the world. And he has been with Strand in a lot of air shows and trade shows and has supported Strand since. So he will be the best person to talk about government's role in actually promoting aerospace engineering in Malaysia. So thank you very much, Mr. Azman, for being with us today, and welcome to our webinar. And our second speaker is Mr. Raven J. Chinia. So he is the Chief Technical Officer of Singularity Aerotech Asia. Unfortunately, due to some technical issues, we won't be getting a video of him in the webinar, but we still can hear his voice. And Raven is actually an aerospace engineer by training with almost 20 years worth of experience. He has worked in a lot of companies with a lot of projects, with multinational teams, and he was also in charge in overseeing Malaysian engineering teams abroad. And he will be the best person to actually talk about aerospace engineering in general, to talk about what actually it takes for an engineer to become a global engineer in aerospace industry. So thank you very much, Raven, for being with us today, and welcome to our webinar.
My pleasure.
And last but not least, our third speaker is Mr. Ahmad Sharil Amin Bakri. He is the Senior Manager in Strand Aerospace Malaysia, and he is the manager in charge of developing the talents in Strand Aerospace, developing them from a local engineer to become a global engineer. So he has been around in the industry together with Raven for about almost 20 years now, and he has experience working abroad as well, and he has experience managing teams abroad as well. And he is also a consultant for the human capital development programs within Malaysia. And Mr. Ahmad will be the best person to talk about how did Malaysia develop its talents and how did we manage to actually export this talent to the likes of Airbus and Boeing. So thank you very much, Ahmad, for being with us today, and welcome to the webinar.
Yeah, pleasure to be here.
So before we start, allow me to briefly let you know about the format of our webinar today. So we will be using, as the previous versions or previous session, we will be using a forum format whereby we will have two rounds of discussion. So in each round, each speaker will be given one preset question, and the speaker will have 6 to 7 minutes to actually answer the question. And at the end of the second session or second round of discussion, which will be at the end of the question number 6, we will have a Q&A session where the audiences and the viewers can actually ask any question to any of our panelists, or if they want to share any opinion, any pointers, or any experience, they can do so, and we will discuss that during that Q&A session. So for the viewers out there, if you want to drop a question, you can do so by writing it in our comment section in the YouTube channel that you're viewing. Or alternatively, what you can do is you can email your questions to us at hello@singularityAerotech.asia. So what will happen is if we cannot answer all the questions that are posted in at the comment section or email to us. What we will do is we will upload the answers, or we'll upload the updates to the questions in our social media pages as well as our website. So please do follow and like our pages in Instagram, in Facebook, as well as LinkedIn. You can search Singularity Aerotech Asia. And you can also visit our website, singularityAerotech.asia, to get more information with regards to the company and, of course, with regards to the aerospace engineering services that SAT Asia has to offer. And before we finish the session after the Q&A, we will give each and every speaker about 2 minutes to do a summary, just to recap what has been discussed. If you have any hopes or aspiration or anything that you want to talk about, or you want to actually get it out there, you are given 2 minutes to do so at the end of the session. And with that, I think without further ado, I would like to start our discussion with the first question to our first panelist, Mr. Azman. So, Mr. Azman, MATRADE is really an essential agency tasked to promote Malaysian products to the world, right? And this actually includes Malaysian engineering capabilities. So, we are talking about tangible and also intangible products. Yet, quite a few Malaysians out there are not very familiar with MATRADE, or even the international community, when they are actually looking for Malaysian product, or they're looking for engineering services, they might not be aware of the agency that is in charge of actually exposing Malaysian companies to the global stage. So if it's okay with you, can you just share with us or make a brief introduction of MATRADE? So what does it do? What's the mandate, and how does it work? What are the modus operandi in general, basically, in helping Malaysian companies exporting their products? Mr. Azman.
Okay. First and foremost, thank you, Jafiz, for inviting MATRADE to participate as one of the panelists in this forum. I think the audience out there, some may not know that MATRADE is a government agency given the mandate to drive Malaysia's international trade through export promotion and development of Malaysian exporters. Okay, let me share a brief background on MATRADE. Basically, MATRADE's role are to raise the profile of Malaysian exporters in foreign markets, disseminate market intelligence to help Malaysian companies gain competitive edge, introduce Malaysian companies to foreign importers, and also to undertake activities to promote the export of Malaysian products and services in overseas market. In general, we are helping and assisting Malaysian companies, in particular Malaysian SMEs, and also those who are mid-tier companies. Okay, we are actively involved in assisting foreign companies to source for suppliers of Malaysian products and services. And our structure in line to promote Malaysian export and to assist Malaysian companies to do business with overseas businesses. We currently have about 46 trade offices abroad, all over the world, in Europe, US, ASEAN, Asia. Okay, these trade offices are given the role to assist Malaysian companies, those who are interested to venture into the export market. Okay, and besides that, we also have regional offices located in Penang, in Terengganu, Johor, as well as in Sabah and Sarawak. And these regional offices also helping our local companies, not only those who have been exporting, but those newcomers, those who are keen to venture into the export business. Okay, let me explain a little bit on MATRADE's core functions. MATRADE's core functions are divided into 4 areas, okay? And one in the area of export promotion, secondly, in exporters development, thirdly, trade and market information, and the fourth one is trade advisory and support. Okay, in the area of export promotion, we assist Malaysian companies, Malaysian SMEs in particular, to raise their profiles in foreign markets to different promotional drive through our participation in trade missions, export acceleration missions, and also international trade exhibitions. What is important here is we organize business matching programs for Malaysian companies. for Malaysian companies and foreign importers. We act as a referral point to link between Malaysian companies, Malaysian exporters, and foreign importers. Okay, and MATRADE's role is to match these Malaysian companies with compatible local partners who can offer the product and services. Okay, okay, back to the exporters development. That is, as I mentioned earlier, export promotion. Okay, in order to equip our local Malaysian companies with knowledge and skills for them to venture into the export market, we do have training programs and also advisory services. Okay, and supported by trade and market information and also trade and advisory support. Okay, and in order to help our Malaysian SMEs, of course, we do provide financial assistance to help our companies to venture into the export business. And some of the incentives given include market development grant and also services export fund. Okay, these two financial incentives are in the form of reimbursable grant, where it helps our Malaysian exporters to defray part of their costs incurred when they do export promotion. Okay, with these programs that we have, incentives that we have, it helps our Malaysian exporters to do business out there. Okay, and maybe I could explain also, besides helping Malaysian companies, those in the manufacturing sector, we also engage with the services providers. We also assist Malaysian companies to export their services abroad. For instance, for example, those in the construction industry. Okay, as some of you may be aware that Malaysia had successfully ventured into some overseas projects abroad and Middle East in the construction sector, and not to mention the other industry as well, ICT industry, oil and gas, and also healthcare services. That's where we are not promoting manufactured and semi-manufactured products. We are also helping our Malaysian companies to export their services. Maybe some of you are aware that we are also quite well known on our professional services, such as engineering services, architectural services. Okay, I think basically that is our role in helping Malaysian companies to export the product and services abroad. Okay.
Okay.
Any over to Encik Afif?
All right. Thank you, Cik Azman, for the introduction on MATRADE. So now we know that MATRADE is actually a government entity, right, under MITI, and it has presence over, I think, what 40 over countries?
Offices. Yeah.
Yes, 46 offices all across the globe. And not only they promote Malaysian products, manufactured products, but also professional services, which are intangible products, right? So I think that's a good introduction of MATRADE, and I think that'll be very valuable, especially for companies that are seeking for professional services from Malaysia. Then MATRADE should be the gatekeeper that they actually talk to get the services from Malaysia. So thank you very much, Mr. Azman, for the sharing. We'll come back to that in our second round of questions. Now, I would like to move on to the second question of the day, which is for Raven. Yep. So now because today we want to discuss about the intangible product, that is the aerospace engineering, right? And as I mentioned before, aerospace engineering sounds, it's very complex, right? And not many people actually realize that we actually have this capability in Malaysia, because engineering as it is sounds very complex. When it comes to aerospace engineering, then people will think that it's very niche, right? And to say that we have that capability is one thing. To say that we actually export the capabilities, and the big companies in Europe, in Japan, in the States, they are using our services in engineering. It might sound very unbelievable to a lot of people, right? What's your opinion, on this perception of aerospace engineering being too complex, right? And that that make people don't believe Malaysia actually has this kind of capabilities? And what are the key attributes of a world-class aerospace engineers now that you have been in the industry for a lot for almost 20 years? And so what do you think is the key attributes of world-class aerospace engineers, especially those that Malaysian engineers have actually exhibited over the years? Over to you, Raven.
Thank you, Afif. So yes, you're right. Engineering is indeed complex, but it's not chaotic. It's predictable. So when it's predictable, you can actually break down the engineering problem into smaller, more manageable chunks. Not to say that these smaller chunks are very simple either. They are still complex in their own right, but they are less complex. So I think if I explain the sort of the engineering process, how engineers approach a problem and solve it, that would give some insight into how we deal with the complexity, and it will also give some insight into what makes a good engineer and also a good engineering company. So in general, engineering problems can be broken down into smaller problems, and you solve these problems individually, and then you put the solution for these smaller problems back together to get the solution for the overall problem. And the way this is done is, once you've broken down the problem, you apply your basic scientific theories that were covered in that's been covered in university. The challenge here is, what's covered in university, the scientific theory is actually valid only for a very narrow set of problems. So what the engineer needs to do is to modify these theories using engineering experience and apply it to the problem at hand. So you need a lot of experience to do that, and you also need to have the collective experience of the organization and of the ecosystem to do that as well, particularly when you're talking about very complex products with complex requirements. Um, so, so you modify those theories, and you come up with an engineering theory, and you apply that to the problem. Um, uh, and then the next step is you then need to put all the different pieces together. So normally when you're talking about a product like an aircraft, you've got different specialist teams looking at the structures, looking at the systems, and within the systems there's a whole bunch of sub teams as well, covering propulsion, fuel, electronics, avionics, navigation. So what that means is, all these teams need to be communicating, and the effectiveness of the team really depends on how well they communicate. So if you look at all the engineering products that have been very successful in the past, that have made an impact to the world, you will notice that it's all produced by a team of engineers. It's never one person, although there may be one or two key individuals that are leading it. It's always a team effort. So communication is very important in ensuring that the best from all the different team members are put together in a meaningful way. So that's the other ingredient uh, when coming to solving engineering problems. Um, so to summarize, if what makes a good engineer, and this is not only true for aerospace, but it's true for any industry, is you need to have good scientific fundamentals. You need to have the experience to modify those scientific theories and apply them to the engineering problem at hand. And I have to stress here that it's not just a case of doing calculations or doing tests. You need to be able to make sense of the results. You need to be able to explain to the customer what it means ultimately to the product when you get a certain result. And then finally, you need to be able to communicate well. You need to be able to speak to your team members, you need to be able to listen as well. So communication is a two-way thing. So a lot of people just focus only on the spoken and the written, but they forget about the listening and the reading. So that's equally important. So you need to be able to communicate your findings, your recommendations to the rest of the team, and then collectively make a decision on what to do with the design. Um, and and actually, everything that I've said applies not only to the individual engineers, but it also applies to the organization as well. So a good organization would have a culture that values communication, that enables communication. You will have a culture where dissenting views can be viewed, and different perspectives are allowed when dealing with an engineering problem, and uh, that's where you get a good product or a good design. You are able to critically look at the design from different perspectives and pick sort of the best route. So in order to do that, the organization needs to have the right culture of openness and integrity. Uh, so, so to answer your question, three elements that make a good engineer: good scientific fundamentals, you need experience, and you need good communication.
All right. Thank you, Raven, for that explanation about aerospace engineering. So there you go. As any other engineering, it is complex, but it's not chaotic. That's what he said. And obviously, there is more than just scientific fundamentals, the things that you have actually learned in classrooms. There are also communication. There are also culture. The mindset and also integrity, that you have to become a proper world-class aerospace engineer, right? So thank you very much for that. And now we move to the third speaker, which is Ahmad. Yes. So listening to what Raven has actually mentioned just now, right, and how he actually described all these world-class aerospace engineer attributes, right? So one will think that it's actually quite a huge task, to actually develop engineers to become an engineer with all the attributes mentioned just now, right? And as the manager in charge of the development in Strand, right? And we have seen Strand exporting engineering services to the world, right? Successfully using, I would say, homegrown talents, right? So what are the things that you have done right in Strand, basically? What's the secret recipe there? How did it all started, and what are the lessons learned maybe you have actually found, along the way in developing our local engineers into global engineers? Ahmed.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Afif. So basically, to answer the question of how do you sort of take up your young graduates into world-class engineers, I think first of all we have to look at in terms of the context of Malaysian environment. So, for example, Malaysian have a lot of potentially homegrown talents that have good skills in both communication and technical skills. However, there still needs to be some bridging in terms of the capability before they can enter the workforce. Right, what Mr. Raven mentioned earlier, that basically academia produces generalized skills, and then what an organization like engineering company needs to do is sort of to bring them up from that level to a more specialized skill that's required to actually deliver the engineering work that's for the customers. So I think to to look at the fundamental aspect, you need to look at the processes that's involved in order to bring these people into the organization. So the first thing that is important is essentially the recruitment phase. So which is basically the open door for the person to come to the organization. So you need to sort of identify the right talent for the particular positions that you're looking for. So in this case, what we do during recruitment is we have a panel of technical people and also human resource support. But essentially, the person who sort of does the interviews and the assessment is essentially the technical engineers themselves who are actually working on the projects. So what these guys are looking for essentially is problem solving skills, whether the candidates have problem solving skills to be able to solve basic fundamental engineering problems. And so they will do, for example, uh, a technical test. So it's a paper test. So maybe 1 hour test. And which sort of assess their university level fundamental knowledge, and then they will do a one-to-one session with these technical engineers, and we will sort of try to see whether they be able to solve fundamental engineering problems. So what we're looking for is mainly the thought process, the problem solving skills, whether they have it inherent in these individuals, because essentially engineering is a problem solving activity. Okay, so it's quite important. And other elements that we look for in the in individual is communication skills, because as what Mr. Raven said earlier, most of the business that we do is involving international clients. So English proficiency, for example, is important. And another aspect is probably not really taken into account in maybe certain organization is the motivation, interest of the candidates itself. So most of the people that we interview, they seem to, because of their aerospace background, they have a keen interest in the work, and I think from based on my experience, it's quite important element as well, since when you are sort of under pressure or you have quite large challenges. So I think having the extra motivation and to overcome these issues, it plays a good part in terms of getting the work done. So besides recruitment, the other aspect that's also important to sort of focus on is the training and development. So once you have the people on board, then you need to think about, okay, what are the skills that they need to sort of deliver on the work. So what we do in Strand, for example, we have a structured training and development program where we assess the individual skills, identify the skill gaps, and then put a series of say objectives that you need to complete within the plan. So every individual will be given a specific training development plan, and in the plan it specifies the things that you need to do in order to achieve the targets that have been set. And these can be technical targets, it can be improvement in communication skills, and so all in all, what we're trying to achieve is trying to increase the employer's effectiveness to sharpen the skills to be able to sort of deliver on the work that's required. And there's also a change in the behavior of the individual. So from the academia mindset to an engineering workforce mindset. So there needs to be an effort to bring that to that certain level. Now, in terms of learning, if I sort of divide it into percentages, there we use essentially a 70-10-20 ratio. Well, 70% means most of the work that's done to bring them up is on-the-job training. And as we found from our experience, the on-the-job training is where most of the learning occur. And another 20% is the classroom-based environment. So this is conducted either internally or externally. And the classes themselves are actually conducted by the technical engineers themselves. So we don't bring anybody outside. We train our staff because on the fundamentals and knowledge and for certain skills that are not a bit certain technical skills or tools that specifically they're not available in the company, we will send people to external training, and sometimes we have to send them to overseas to learn some of the important skills. And so in Strand itself, because we had a very aggressive expansion policy in the past, we had to create a specialized structure to sort of to manage this training development. I think in terms of the hiring, I think maybe we had to hire about 150 engineers within like a 4 or 5 year period. So it was quite a aggressive policy. But so in order to cope with that influx of candidates, this training development structure was put in place. So and in the structure, what we call it the group leader structure. Essentially, there will be a senior manager who's in charge of the structure, and then there are 4 or 5 different groups under the structure. And what we do is we sort of identify from the batch of graduates there the ones that have the most maturity, who has the leadership abilities, and we place them inside to lead this group. So they call the group leaders. And essentially, what they do is they sort of manage the nurturing of these people with the help of the staff that's in charge of the organization. So monitoring and managing the development of people to ensure that they achieve the targets that are set in the training development plan. And over the course of the years, I think eventually, in terms of my experience, when they reach about 4 or 5 years, then what happens is these individuals, when we find that they achieve the standard competency level and to become independent, to able to carry out the job independently. So then they will move from this training development structure into the respective departments. So whether it be the design department, the stress analysis department, or the fatigue department. So essentially, just to sort of give an overview, I think what's important here is first of all the recruitment, to identify the right candidate that you need to have to fill the positions. And number two is once candidates are involved, put into the organization, you need to make sure that they're trained properly and they have a training development plan that's specific to certain roles that you identify in organization. And I think a lot of organizations that I see them, they don't really put much emphasis on the training development part of it, and which is quite a bit of a shame, because like I said before, Malaysians, they have talent, they have potential talent, and you have to mold them to become the engineer that you want them to be. Right. So I think that should sort of answer some of the questions that you asked.
All right. Thank you, Ahmad, for that explanation. So I think we can see that there's quite a lot of work put into it, right? So it's a well thought out process, right? And I think one of the key things in there that maybe not that many organizations actually realize is that on the job training and early exposure of the engineers to the real work, especially for the global or international scale work, putting them abroad as early as their first year into their employment is actually something that help their development to expedite further, right? So I think that's quite interesting, and it's a model that has been proven to work, right, with Strand, and it's really interesting for us to learn, how these things are done in Strand. And I think we'll get back to that again in our second round. We would like to see some of these experiences, especially when it comes to the cultural element. Now that we know in technical and exposure to customers and all, maybe the cultural element is something that we want to talk about maybe later on. So thank you very much, Ahmad, for that one. So I think with that, we have concluded our first round of discussion. So now we'd like to get to the second round of discussion, and now we are back with Jasmine. Right. So, like I mentioned, right, now we know what MATRADE does, okay? And as I mentioned earlier when I introduced Jasmine, we said that, or I said that Jasmine has been a long-time collaborator with Strand Aerospace, right, in promoting our engineering services. So, can you share with us, right, share with the audience the experience of actually marketing intangible products? So, because marketing tangible products like manufactured products is quite simple in a way that you have the product specification, and then you can bring the samples right into exhibitions and all that. But intangible services, intangible products like engineering services, is not as straightforward, right, as selling metal parts, for example, right? So, what were the challenges that you actually faced, and maybe learning from past experience? What do you think Malaysians, uh, you know, this include companies and industries as well as the agencies? What do we need to improve so that we can actually increase our export in engineering services? Jasmine.
Okay, thank you, Jafif. I must say that Mati had been supporting Strand for so many years in exporting Strand services globally. Yeah. Okay, in fact, through Matrix participation in some iconic events, signature events, aerospace events in particular, where Strand also participated. Okay, for example, we had participated in international air shows, in UK, Paris air shows, Farnborough air shows, and some other B2B events where Boeing and Airbus were there. Okay, as you said that the challenges are there in comparison of promoting tangible products. It's not that easy to promote intangible products such as engineering services. But as you're aware that Matrix's role we to our trade officers abroad, for example, they engage with the industry players, not only for manufactured or tangible products, also in the services sector. As I mentioned earlier, we had been successfully promoting our construction industry, ICT industry, oil and gas industry. That we can see that there are some areas, non-construction projects and construction project as well. It goes together where we export building materials, for example. We also there are also engineering experts, selling the skills. Okay. What is important here is that MATRADE, we do engage with the industry players overseas, where we provide contacts. Okay. For instance, for engineering services, we work together with the relevant trade association, chambers, and also recognized bodies, board of engineers. Okay, for example, like oil and gas. Also, we work. We do not work in isolation. Okay, through these activities, we do help the services sector to promote the services, the intangible products. Okay, let me explain a little bit more on some of the programs that we managed to help Strand to promote your services abroad. For example, previously we did participate in international air shows, and recently, I think back 2 years ago, we started to take part in OEMs events, merely B2B events. Okay, namely, we went to US, and also we went to France. Okay, in US, we took part in the Aerospace and Defense Supplier Summit in Seattle, where Strand was there as well. And I believe that Strand managed to develop some new contacts, right? In comparison to the existing contacts that you have. You engage with Boeing's tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers, for example. And from there, you develop more, you engage with them, you have concluded sales, for instance, okay? So through these platforms, you manage to develop your contacts, and I would say generally you manage to export your services to the US and North African market as well. And we did take part in Airbus event in Toulouse. Strand was also there. You get more contacts on the ground there, and you manage to meet up with some of the prominent tier 1 suppliers under Airbus, for instance. Okay. Basically, that's the role that MATRADE, we contribute, how we help Strand and also other engineering services players to promote the services abroad. Okay, and we also have a local event. I think Strand also participated before, namely Kuala Lumpur International Aerospace Business Convention. Besides, we went overseas, participated in the Airbus and Boeing events. We also have our own event, MATRADE. We collaborate with the Malaysia Aerospace Industry Association, and also one event organizer that has been organizing many events, aerospace events throughout the world. Okay, and this signature event, Kuala Lumpur International Aerospace Business Convention, in short, KLIBC, had successfully, helped Malaysian companies, including Strand, to get new contacts, new customers. Okay, I think there are, as I mentioned earlier, these are some of the programs that MATRADE had, organized and also participated to help our local players to venture abroad. Okay, maybe there were some challenges, in helping the services sector. It's not like the manufactured products we can see, like furniture, what else, you name it. You see, you are selling your skills and knowledge. It's intangible, but there are to certain specific platforms. That's where the aerospace sector is a niche sector, and from time to time, MATRADE, we plan our strategies. How do we go to get more customers, overseas customers for Strand, for example. That's where government G2B, platform plays important role. For instance, maybe our association, MATRADE as well, and also MITI, together, we sit down, discuss with Airbus, for instance, or Boeing, what are the strategic plan that we have in order to have our local players in this, our local aerospace industry players in particular, you know, to get more work packages. Okay, to get more work packages. We do not know what is the short term or immediate or long term plan of the OEMs. So that's where G2B, for example, plays important role besides G2G. Okay, I still remember when Strand, you went to China. You see, you seek the help of MATRADE. That's where we link you with our trade office in China. We have 4 trade offices in China, and we foresee that it's not that easy to penetrate the China market. You must have some contacts over there. That's where our trade commissioners, they engage with some of the association or relevant companies, local companies over there, and in fact, we can also set up a consortium to be led by anchor companies, you see, to get more of our industry players to venture into that respective market. Okay, I hope that I'm answering some of your questions where MATRADE as a government agencies play a significant role in helping Strand in particular.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Azman, for that explanation. I think I can attest to that because I've been to some of the air shows and trade shows as well, and every time I'm there, I will surely meet the trade commissioner, and they've been very helpful. But I think the challenges of actually exporting intangible products remains, because it is something that cannot be exhibited, like manufactured products that easily, right? And I think we are learning as we go, basically, as to what's the best strategy for us to actually export skills and knowledge, right? That is engineering services to the world. So thank you, Mr. Azman, for that sharing. And right now, I would like to move to our next question for Raven, right? And this is a follow-up to the first question that we have, and it also says something to do with what Mr. Azman has mentioned just now. Like I mentioned when I introduced you earlier, since the inception of Strand Aerospace Malaysia, basically, we've been deployed to various countries across the globe, right? So providing Malaysian aerospace engineering services, and you have also, supervised some of our Malaysian engineers and engineering team abroad, right? And based on this experience, right, maybe you can share some of the experience of actually working abroad as a Malaysian engineer or part of a Malaysian engineering team or part of an international team that has Malaysian engineers amongst the midst of the team, right? And also, what are the feedbacks, that we get from global customers and also from other engineers when it comes to Malaysian engineers? Do we have sort of like advantages that we should actually play to? Or is there some challenges? Are there some challenges that we should overcome in order for us to improve our engineering services to be exported? So if you can elaborate on that, Raymond.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. So, just for our viewers, give them a little bit of background. I've I've dealt with engineering companies in Germany, France, UK, Japan, and I've actually been in a team for some of these companies as well, back in my younger days. So, uh, and based on my experience, is I would say culture. Culture is probably one of the biggest factors. I would say, or the biggest sort of observable that I can see where Malaysians are different. So every country and every organization has their own engine culture and their own philosophy. What that means is, it's their way of working. So the technical is the same. The laws of physics are the same for everybody. So you can't change that. What is different across the countries and the different organizations is the culture, the way they communicate, the way they work as a team, and then how they solve problems collectively. So that varies from country to country. I've seen some customers, they have a very open communication style, very flat organizations. So what that means is, the senior engineers and the younger engineers, and then the chief engineer or the architect of the overall design. They're all treated as equals. So it's a very flat organization. Anybody can approach anybody with an idea or to raise an issue. I've also seen organizations that are very hierarchical. You are put in very specific teams, and you report to a lead engineer, and that lead engineer reports to an engineering manager, and the managing manager reports into a technical committee, which is then chaired by the chief designer. So very very hierarchical, very rigid organizations. Both styles work. I've seen it work very successfully for the companies that use them. And what is important here is that, when you're working in a certain style or a certain culture, every member of the team has to understand that philosophy and practice that philosophy to be effective. Uh, an interesting analogy can be, would be uh, team sports. If you look at football, hockey, water polo, anything that requires teamwork, you will find that just having a very talented individual players alone are not enough. They have to be able to work together as a team, and they need to sort of understand the unwritten rules that are in the team. And you can see that very clearly in some of these professional games where you got a very good player, from a team, and then he joins another team at the end of the season, and all of a sudden he can't perform. And the opposite is true. You can see a non-performing player from one team, and then they move to another team, and all of a sudden that person is able to perform. And it's all to do with the team culture and the way they communicate. So the same thing goes for engineering. So it's important for everyone to be able to be aligned with that culture and practice that. So Malaysians, what I found is they're very trainable, they're very adaptable. I think that's one of our strengths. Uh, I mean, in general, they're technically very sound Malaysians. So I've not met any Malaysian who've not been able to learn anything new, given proper guidance and coaching. But when it comes to the cultural and the communication side, that is something that you cannot teach. That's something they have to to observe and learn on their own. And what I found, in most Malaysians, they are very modest. So that makes them sort of very adaptable. They can go into any organization and team. They can observe the style and the culture that is at play, and then they can blend in. So I think that adaptability and that modesty, is our strength as Malaysians. So I've seen Malaysians that can work in Germany. Where so in Germany it's normally a very very flat sort of organization where everybody can speak up. It's not a problem. There's no such thing as reporting lines, as for technical issues, for technical issues, there's no such thing as reporting lines. Anybody can go to anybody with an idea or with a problem. I've seen Malaysians work very well in very hierarchical cultures, like in Japan, where it's a little bit more structured. Uh, and there are certain, I would say, positions that you have to respect. Malaysians work very well there as well. And in some cases, I've seen the uh, same team of Malaysians that are deployed to Germany in 1 year. And then 2 years later, they're deployed to UK, and then maybe a year later, or 3 years later, they're deployed to Japan. And they're able to change their style. So that's actually a big selling point. And yeah, I can't stress enough, how important the culture is. The feedback that I get from customers is that it's very comfortable working with Malaysians. They're very at ease. They don't feel like they have to do anything differently in terms of their working style, their working culture. So it's very natural. So I think that's important. So once that comfort level is there, then the engineers can focus on the technical. You don't have to worry about miscommunication. You don't have to worry about offending someone, or get or creating confusion. You can focus on the technical. So that's where the cultural element and the adaptability comes in. Malaysians are very good at that. I've seen that firsthand. And the other thing that Malaysians they tend to be good at is that they tend to make good ambassadors. What I mean by that is, because of their easygoing attitude, I think we can all agree Malaysians are generally quite easygoing. They act as bridges. So in every organization, it's never perfect. There will be always some communication gaps where certain teams are not talking with other team members, or maybe they are not communicating enough. Malaysians are very good at bridging that. So I've seen that happen so many times. Not only when the Malaysian engineers are in the customer's office in Europe or in Japan, but also when we are working remotely. I noticed Malaysians tend to see that, okay, there are communication gaps, and they are not afraid of going to the individual engineers and getting them together to have a discussion to clear up any miscommunication or any missing information. So I think that's a big selling point. And the customers actually do realize that. I do notice that in some organizations where we've sent Malaysians to, they actually uh, adopt some of our working style, our working practices. They adopt some of the processes or the checklists that we've developed for our own use, and they see that this is a good thing and they've adopted it. So I think that's a validation of our approach towards engineering. Uh, so yeah, so to summarize, very adaptable, very modest. I think that's our strengths. And also good good mediators and sort of connectors, for the various team members.
Right. All right, thank you, Evan. So I think that's quite interesting to know, right? Because so technically we are actually on par with engineers from Europe, from Japan, from the States, and even that particular statement, might actually shock a few people in Malaysia because they didn't know that we have such capabilities. But what's actually making Malaysian engineers, you know, better? Than some countries or some other engineers that have the adaptability and also the culture, the working culture that we have, and also the modesty, the humility that our engineers have, as well as the easygoing attitude that we have, so we can become the bridge, right? And we've seen this firsthand. I have seen this firsthand as well, and that's why I think quite a lot of Malaysians are becoming integrators in engineering offices all around the world. So thank you for that, Raven. And I think this actually flows nicely to the next question that I am going to ask Ahmad for our last question of the day, right? So like what Raven has mentioned, right, and also what you have mentioned earlier as well, developing talents, with regards to their technical ability is one thing, right? Basically, their scientific fundamentals, what they learn in school, and giving them, a lot of exercises, practices, pseudo tasks, and all those stuff for them to get familiarized with the technical aspect of the work is one thing, right? But to have them or to inculcate the right culture, the right mentality, the adaptability, the humility is something different altogether, right? And so the question now is that is it really something? I think you have mentioned in the first question, whereby and Raven also mentioned this, whereby some of these attitudes, some of these attributes, right? It's inherent, so it's just something that you have to actually find from recruitment, right? And but also just because it's inherent doesn't mean that you don't have to actually polish them. You have to actually develop them further, right? So now the question is, how do you deal with this cultural element, right? Maybe we have engineers with bright minds, they have a very solid scientific fundamentals, but what if you find engineers that doesn't have this cultural adaptability, that have not been abroad before? So there must be some kind of concern when we send them to Germany, for example, and they've never been outside Malaysia. So can they actually survive the new surrounding, the new environment, working with a very different people with very different culture and mindset? So how did you deal with these? Uh, Not to say problems, but maybe challenges when you were in Strand.
Right, thank you, Rafif. So I think along the lines as what Mr. Raven has mentioned, the culture actually plays an important part in this process. So I'm just going to describe my explanation, my point of view in terms of culture. So I think that Malaysians generally they are brought in along various degrees of Asian culture, and it's programmed into the psyche at a very young age. And so this we're talking about Malaysian culture. So we are brought up to sort of respect the elders. There's a sort of hierarchical change in the way we communicate. We also work together in a group. We perform better in a group. So there's always this so-called collectivism, so the importance of the community. So we make sure that everyone is, they work together to achieve a certain communal success. So when they come into the workforce in Strand, for example, because we in the initial part of the existence of the organization, a lot of the work was very Western or European. So they have to be molded into to sort of accepting this particular change in terms of the working conditions or the working culture. So when I talk about European mindset, I'm talking about more of a individualistic type of traits, which are more competition. So there's more independence, transparency, accountability in terms of what you do. For example, if you make a mistake, then you have to sort of own up to it and correct it, and also taking ownership of the work, being proud of the work that you've done. And then when, for example, if customer challenge you in terms of thing, you have to, and if it's right, you have to defend it. So these are all very important traits that you need to have when you deal with in terms of the global aerospace organizations. And such asceticism and independence may be quite foreign to Malaysian who come to step into the first base in terms of the aerospace workforce. So what we try to blend in is to sort of mentor in terms of a mentorship program to give them more exposure to these projects and same time to mentor them to ensure that they sort of understand the requirements of this culture, and also to sort of build up the, the, the nurturing ability of the organization. So this culture cannot be built overnight. So it takes some time. So everyone who goes into the organization will have to be ingrained into this working strand working culture at the very start. So eventually becomes a natural habit. So in terms of before we sort of send them abroad, so we have to sort of assess their capabilities and also their competencies in terms of being able to adapt to this culture. So what I mentioned earlier, when we have the training and development plan, so one of the things that we look for is adaptability of people, whether they can adapt to the environment, are they ready for sort of these challenges. So that's one of the things. And when you talk about replication, I think how do you replicate such culture? So it's one of the key questions. Yes, you may be able to sort of bring it to the level, but how do you make sure that everyone that goes into the organization has this culture? So I think it depend. It will have to be made from the top, leadership, leadership punya leadership example. So leadership by example. So people who are at the highest level of the management have to sort of show the way. So they have to sort of adopt and drive the culture down to the floor. So when I say about that, so some samples of uh, this kind of traits are so for example the senior managers they practice an open door policy where anyone of the staff can come in and to discuss any problem issues that they have, whether it's personal or related to work, and that's what is the bond between the senior management or senior manager and the employee or the junior staff. It also helps to motivate them when they sort of do the day-to-day work, because they know that the management is behind their back. Any issues they face, you have that the management will sort of support them in the work day-to-day work. Another important element I think which is also vital is the sharing of tacit knowledge. Tacit knowledge are knowledge that cannot be taught in the classroom. So these are based on experience. So most of the senior managers they've tried to sort of transfer this knowledge, the trusted knowledge, to the people below them, either to mentoring or through even during the projects when they sort of lead the team. And one of the important aspect is the concept of lessons learned. So, for example, we try to do lessons learned in either during the project or at the end of the project. So the lessons learned activities basically what happens there is we sit in a team and then we discuss okay what went wrong in the project, okay how was it resolved and what was actually right, what should have been done to sort of make sure that it doesn't happen again. So it's sort of like a making sure that the problems or issues do not reoccur again in future projects. So that's one of the proactive activities that we do in a company. So all in all, I think all elements sort of builds up that culture in organization, and and it has to be driven by the leadership, the management from the top to bottom. So everyone that goes to walk into the door of the company, and day one they have to be exposed to this culture and make sure that they then sort of promote the same culture to their subordinates when they go up the level of the management career path. So yeah, I think that sort of answers the question.
Okay. Yep. Thank you very much, Ahmad, for the answer just now. So yeah, so we can see that yes, culture is a very big component in making sure that our engineering services or the engineers are exportable, right? So what you have described just now is again, just like the first answer, it is actually a meticulously thought out development plan. Rather than things happen naturally, so there is some strategic elements to it. There's some conscious decisions that have been made, when designing the development the program, so that all of these cultures can be infused into the engineers. And I think this actually speaks volume, when it comes to the ability of a relatively small Malaysian company back then to be able to actually export its engineering services to the world. And all of this is because of all the developmental programs and the attention that has been actually paid to actually design all these programs, and these programs have actually paid off. So I think that's quite interesting insight into how Malaysia have actually developed its talents, so that now we can actually export engineering services to the world. So thank you very much, Ahmad, for that. And I think that conclude quite nicely our discussion for today, because today we have actually talked about the government's role in promoting our engineering services. We have also spoke about aerospace engineering services in itself, what it is, how complex it is, and what are the key elements to make a good global engineer. Right? We talk about scientific fundamentals, and we also talk about the cultural elements to it, and how a real Malaysian company actually made a real, Malaysian engineers who are actually deployed to the likes of Germany, UK, Japan, and whatnot. And it's a real success story. So overall, I think we had a very good discussion today. And as I mentioned just now, we are now in about we have about 20 minutes give a take to actually discuss or answer some of the questions posted by our viewers, right? So we do have a few questions here that I think are quite interesting. Maybe the first question is actually for you, Jasmine. Um,
Okay.
uh, yeah, this is regarding MATRADE. So the question is, the question is actually about the uh, is there any way, right? Is there any way for market to actually support in terms of lowering the cost of putting our engineers on site, right? So this is quite interesting because the cost of actually putting our engineers, for example, if we send our engineers to Germany for a month or 2 months, right? One of the biggest costs actually to send them there and to actually find accommodation for them, to give some life expenses, over there. So is there something that can be done, by agencies like Market or any other agency that actually can help sort of like manage this cost?
Okay, Encik Afif.
Yes.
Um, the question whether market support in lowering the cost of on-site delivery, as you mentioned earlier. Okay, I would say that it is beyond our control. We do have, as I mentioned in the first round of the forum just now, we have one financial assistance incentive given to Malaysian companies, namely market development grant. Okay, and this market development grant is entitled for Malaysian companies to claim when they do some promotion overseas. Okay, and it covers as well accommodations, for instance, accommodation. But it depends on the eligibility of the activities. You know, okay. Let's say if you are there for so many months, okay, the MDG covers there are certain ceilings, you see, amount allocated for a company to claim. If exceed the ceiling, then the company is unable to claim. You see, and the ceiling has been expanded. You see,
Mm.
previously for the market development grant, we do provide about for per company. When you do some promotion abroad, you can claim up to 25,000 RM ringgit. Previously, 15,000 RM. That covers the cost. You see, cover your participation fee. You let's say you take a exhibition booth. It covers also accommodation, but should not exceed the ceiling. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I
I
think
I'm answering the question.
yes. I think another part of the question is this, Jasmine. So for promoting, attending air shows, I think
Yeah.
MDG is helpful. But what about because we are talking about engineering companies? Let's say a Strand has to send two engineers to Germany to do some engineering work for 1 week, for example, right? So
Okay. Okay. Okay.
accommodation for that 1 week,
Okay. All right. Okay.
yes,
As you're aware that MDG, if it is related to trade event like air shows,
yeah,
okay, in your case, if let's say Strand will be sending two engineers over there, you see, in fact, at the moment, we do not have any incentive on that.
I see. All right.
We
So
do not have
maybe
any
it's
incentive.
something that we can actually discuss
But,
further. I
but in
think.
future, we can, based on the feedback from Malaysian
Yes.
companies, you see, we can take into consideration. But at the moment, at present, we do not have such a support given to our Malaysian companies. Mhm.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much, Azman, for the answer.
Yeah.
I think since we are talking to Azman, maybe I can pose another question to Azman.
All right.
Basically,
Okay.
other than the business promotion, right? Like trade shows, air shows, and then maybe some publications or whatnot. Is there any other uh, uh, measures taken or initiative taken to encourage exporting businesses to be more competitive in the global market? So I think this has something to do with maybe in terms of incentive to lower the cost, lower the price that we can offer to the world. Taking into account the competition that we are facing with countries, for example, like India, where they actually offer a much more cost-effective solution, for example. So is there any
Mhm.
measure that we can actually work together with MATRADE or any other government agency, as far as you know, that can actually help, other than because I think you did mention about export development just now, right? So one is
Yes,
about
yes, yes.
sales and marketing, and another one is development. So what kind of incentives or what kind of programs are there in there?
Okay, in the area of exporters development, besides export promotion, as
Mm-hmm.
mentioned earlier, we assist Malaysian companies to equip the companies with knowledge and skills.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, through our training programs and advisory services. Okay,
Okay.
we have outlined several training programs that would help our Malaysian companies to meet international standards, for instance, in terms of technology, product design, packaging, health, and safety standards that would make them more competitive when they venture into the export business, you see. Okay, through this training, we also have specific programs under the exporters development, such as Bumi Putra Exporters Development Program, Youth Exporters Development Program, and also Women Exporters Development Program. Okay, this is hand-holding program where companies can register, but subject to the selection of the committee. We select companies based on, we do audit,
Mm-hmm.
we do on-site visit, we see the capabilities of the companies, capability and capacities as well, the management, the financial management of the companies, to see to make sure that the companies are ready to
Mm-hmm.
export.
So
Okay,
it's more
for
like
those
a coaching
okay,
program.
for those newcomers, they have to equip themselves with more information, trade information. We are offering such services like my portal. We have also business information center at MATRADE. You see, where companies can do some research, can gather more information, trade information. You see, so that
Mm-hmm.
they are equipped with knowledge and skills to make them more competitive before venture into the export market.
All right.
Okay.
So there are coaching programs and whatnot, right?
Yes,
That
yes.
actually are available
Yeah.
from MATRADE. Okay,
I
thank you,
think some
Chazman.
some of the audience outside there, they may not be aware. Maybe
Yeah,
they think about only export promotion. We also
yes.
have these exporters development programs to help our Malaysian companies.
Yep, yep.
Okay.
So I think maybe we can get more visibility on that. We can share
Yeah.
some of the links to information that's available in MATRADE website.
Yes. Yeah.
That
Correct. Correct.
maybe we can visit and
I
have a
think
look.
we have all the information in the website, but I would advise if those who are interested to approach Madrid to
Mm,
come to our head office here in KL, then we can have one-to-one, advisory consultation.
right. Okay. Thank you very much, Jasmine, for the answer. We do have a couple of other questions. I think I'll ask this question to Ahmad first. Ahmad. So their question about what are the immediate action that universities or learning institution can take, right, in order to inculcate the qualities you mentioned. I think this is pertaining to the communication skills, the culture, the working culture, the motivation, and the kind of things. So obviously you have that program in Strand, but maybe we can actually do that bridging a little bit during their final year in university, that kind of thing. So what are the immediate actions that these universities can take? You're on mute, Ahmad. You have to unmute your microphone. Yeah.
So to answer the question, I think one of the things is university would understand sort of how we conduct the business on a day-to-day basis, and what are the important skills and culture that's being sort of being worked out in the organization. So I think, for example, in the past there has been some visiting lecturers who actually come to us, who stayed in the office to sort of observe these things. So I think that we had some instances in the past where they sort of capture the information. So it's like a learning process for them. So sometimes they find out if working in a company, there's a lot of these nuances, the different cultures they have to sort of absorb. And then they record this information back, and then they go back to the universities, and they can sort of then implement that into some of the programs. So I think think the bridging part is probably one of the things that you have to look into. I think the key aspect is to make sure that the institutions are sort of abreast with the latest development was happening in industry, because the industry basically moves very fast. So I think one of the ways is to have a closer collaboration, is to have, like, visiting lecturers to actually be in the company and start to see how it works and what are the things that you have to consider. So and if you manage to look at the day-to-day activities, and you find you learn a lot in terms of the organization environments and the things that we do. I think besides that, yeah, I think collaboration between universities and industry is important. And like I said, there has to be like an exchange program sort of element, so that we both know, okay, what are the limitations of industry, what are the limitations of education. So in order to sort of come to a point where there's a seamless integration between the two, because we're still far ahead, but I think effort needs to be done to make that happen.
Yep. So I think engagement here is key between the institutions and also the industry players, right? And I think uh, previously, my opinion on this one is that we have to break this basically a stigma, on industrial engagement being something that is so one-off that it doesn't really have that much value, because that is sort of like the stigma that's lingering in universities as well as in industry, whereby industry is always looking for some, incentive to go into universities, and universities are also going into the industry just to get research topics, but it's not really about preparing the graduates, for the workforce. So I think, but we are seeing quite a lot of positive changes in universities nowadays, whereby you have a lot of lecturers, especially the young ones, who are aware of these problems, because their colleagues, their friends back in the universities are now in the industry, so they are talking more often, nowadays, because of all this technology that's available. So I think that the gap is now being bridged much better than before, but still there are quite a lot of works to do. And I think if we play our cards right, maybe your work, Ahmad, will not be so much after this, because a lot of the thinking is done actually in the universities.
Yeah,
Right. I think the final question that we have, this is for Raven, I think, right? So the question is from Mr. Trenchard. How will the knock-on effects of COVID-19 affect the engineering services industry within Malaysia? And what pivots do you think will be required to stay relevant within the post-COVID environment?
Yeah, that's the question on everybody's mind.
Yep.
I can't speak for all engineering services, but for aero, certainly, there has been a huge impact on aero. It's not only COVID, but there has not been actually any major aircraft development programs for the last few years from the uh, the big boys, the Boeings and the Airbus. Uh, I think it will take at least a few years for the mainstream airliner segment to recover. I think that's pretty obvious, I think every player knows that. Uh, my advice is, maybe if you're an engineering services company doing design work, you might want to look at general aviation. There has been a uncharacteristic increase in business jet demand, and I wouldn't say general aviation is booming, but there's certainly more work in general aviation compared to the mainstream airliner segment. So and I think it remains to be seen, how air travel will look like post COVID. Everyone is hoping that would be a vaccine, but we don't know. We don't know how that would play out, and flying passenger travel habits may change as well. So we don't know what would be the most optimal way of traveling. So what that means is, you could be seeing uh, sm- uh, smaller aircraft being used in the future, and hence, the general aviation market would be a good pivot, I would say. And then there's a lot of interest in the air mobility segment even prior to COVID. Now with the COVID crisis, I think there is probably more interest to look at alternative means of air travel besides the traditional method of flying a large airliner. So general aviation, have a look at general aviation.
Okay. So general aviation, so that is the answer. But I think I speak for almost everyone in Malaysia that we are not very familiar with general aviation, right? And I'm sure MATRADE is also quite new in this because we've been dealing with a lot of all these big OEMs, right?
Yeah.
So now, yeah, I think it's a collective effort, right? That we have to actually look into this pivot, that we can leverage on for us to stay relevant, in this post-COVID-19 time. Okay, I think that's all the time that we have for question and answer, I'm afraid. We do have other questions, but we will try to answer them, either in our YouTube channel, in the comment section, or we can upload them in our social media pages, right? And thank you very much for all the questions that were posted by our viewers and audience. And we really hope that we have managed to actually answer them to your satisfaction. So before we end the session, like I promised earlier, we will give an opportunity for our panelists to give 2 minutes, summary of what we have discussed today. So we'll start with Mr. Ahmad.
Right. So I think just to summarize back, I think what organizations in Malaysia need to sort of look into is bringing up the homegrown talent, because Malaysians have a lot of potential to become world class, whether they're engineers or whatever technical positions they're into. There are talent out there. It's just a matter of how the organization sort of mold them into those positions. And so organization needs to have the right culture, structure, and leadership in order to make that happen. Focusing on the recruitment process and training development of the staff to ensure that people are developed in the right way in order to support the business needs of the organization. So I think that's a key takeaway from this, that we have talent, and then and you have to, an organization needs to have a long-term view of developing its talent to develop them to world-class employees.
Okay, thank you, Ahmad, for that summary on the talent that we have and the need to develop them. Now, Raven, your 2 minutes.
Um, for me, the key takeaway or the message that I would like to send our audience is, we as a country we have all the ingredients. We've got a supportive government, we've got a good education system, we've got the human capital pool. Now all we have to do is to utilize them. So we need more businessmen, we need more organizations, more companies, to to go into engineering services. And it's been proven it can be done. It has been done. We have been successful. You just look at the oil and gas industry. Very vibrant engineering services ecosystem there, comprising of multinationals and local players. The electronics industry is coming up as well. It used to be all contract manufacturers. Now you see a lot of services companies in there, and the composition is also a good mix of multinationals and local players. So I would say, for the other sectors like agriculture, automotive, aerospace, there's room for improvement. So let's have more players, more engineering organizations there, and together, I think we'll create some value for the country.
All right. Thank you, Raven. And finally, Jasmine, your thoughts? 2 minutes.
Okay. I think MATRADE will continue to facilitate and provide business platform for our local players to grow. Okay, with the core functions, in export promotion, in the area of exporters development, however, this effort must be complemented with an equally strong and dedicated commitment on the part of our local companies to continuously expand their capacity and capability in terms of knowledge, technology acquisition, and so forth. Okay, and I would say that we had assisted Strand to be a global champion. Okay, and I believe Strand is one of the Malaysian companies that had created, well-known brand globally. I think some of the OEMs know you already, tier one, tier two suppliers in the aerospace industry. Okay, and we are still here to help you to move up the value change. Okay, and I was made to understand that Strand started as a small and medium-sized company, SME, but now you had move up to be a mid-tier company. Mid-tier company is a Malaysian company that your annual revenue is more than 50 million. You know, so I think that's great. You had achieved something to the support of MATRADE as one of the government agencies. Besides MITI, and other government agencies, MIDA as well. Okay. I think those outside their audience, those who are seasoned exporters, of course, you still approach MATRADE, those newcomers especially, those who are export ready, those who may not familiar with MATRADE, please come and see us, approach us, and we are ready to help. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Encik Azman. So again, we would like to thank MATRADE and also Strand Aerospace Malaysia as our collaborator for this webinar. And like what Raven said and what Ahmad said, we have all the right ingredients in Malaysia. And with the help of MATRADE, I think we can push engineering services export even further, especially in this quite difficult time. I think working together is the best option, right, for us to actually get out of this crisis. Again, thank you very much for everybody. Thank you very much to our panelists. Thank you, Shazman. Thank you, Ahmad. And thank you, Raven, for your time.
You.
I hope this is not the last time we will see each other again in a webinar. Perhaps we can actually have more webinars after this discussing other stuff, or maybe some of the stuff that we discussed today in details. We can have another seminar for that. And I would like to also thank our viewers for tuning in. And thank you for the questions. And for those who have more questions, like I mentioned, you can still send them to the comment section of the video on YouTube channel. You can also email it to us at hello@singularityAerotech.asia, hello@singularityAerotech.asia. Please visit our social media pages in LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Just search for Singularity Aerotech Asia. You should be able to find us there. And you can also visit our website at singularityAerotech.asia as well for you to get information on all the services, including engineering services that we can offer. And I think with that, we have concluded our webinar for today. And I really hope to see all our panelists again in other seminars. And with that, I thank you very much and have a good day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.